Welcome to We Are All In. On this program, we're going to talk about support training for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Specifically, this is a very difficult program to write just because there's so many vastly different ways that people practice Jiu-Jitsu. And a lot of people, I think, fall into the trap of just applying strength and conditioning as a general concept into Jiu-Jitsu. I wanted to pull Jaime in here, competitive black belt and also longtime training partner, familiar with the program. We've been training together for the last 10 years. Physically and also training a lot in Jiu-Jitsu, and I want to just have a conversation about our ideas and concepts about why it's difficult to train for Jiu-Jitsu and kind of introduce the concepts and the ideas to the program. So welcome, Jaime. Thanks for sitting down and doing this.
Sure.
Tell me about Jiu-Jitsu and where you see kind of the practice and why it's hard to support it through auxiliary means.
Sure. Yeah, the hard thing about Jiu-Jitsu is that there's no one size fits all. So you're always trying to figure out how to get to, I guess, your goal, your endpoint, but you're also taking into account physical limitations, physical goals. You know, people are trying to get stronger, bigger, faster. When you're trying to put all these different pieces together and make a whole, you're trying to unwind a bunch of different factors that aren't always obvious to you.
Yeah, I think Jiu-Jitsu, from my perspective, especially now, and it's kind of always been this, but it's actually like more realistic now that I'm in it. There's some confluence going on. Obviously, I think the statement is fundamentally true to say that if you are stronger, you will be better at Jiu-Jitsu. Asterisks.
Sure.
Right? So the asterisk on that is the most important part, which is if your skill develops in coordination with that strength. The strength has to be the lever that is behind a technical base. And I think other people look at it as like, well, if I just get a bigger deadlift, Jiu-Jitsu gets better. And that's where you run into problems because we have a very difficult time defining strength, even in the strength and conditioning field, even inside of fitness, we don't really know what strength is. We see a big squat, a big deadlift, and we go, that person's strong. That person gets hurt by sneezing. So that's not necessarily a cofactor. I think especially competitive Jiu-Jitsu guys fall into this too because, you know, they're really looking for this peak expression that definitely does need auxiliary training to support. And from that, they look around and they see football guys, those guys are strong. They see powerlifters, they see Olympic style weightlifters, sometimes they see CrossFitters, and they go, oh, cool, those guys are strong based off our cultural definition of what strength is. And so they just layer on the training. That's the first mistake. The second mistake that I think is probably more common is that people take Jiu-Jitsu-ish moves and then they load them or they replicate them or mimic them in a gym. So, you know, they know that grip is a factor. If I go to grip, you know, and this is strong, then if I make that stronger, then it should be good. So I'm doing chins on a gi and pulling a rope that, you know, I'm basically just amplifying or mimicking what I already get in training. And I see that as a huge mistake because it further unbalances the person. So we're looking for a couple things. We need very specific strength and we need the ability to balance the system from where the sport kind of unhinges somebody. The third thing that I really wanted to consider when writing this program and trying to really move people and progress them into like making a training system that actually like improves something is awareness and orientation. And that layers on in a very direct way. So traditional strength methodology, you would lift a big weight, you would get strong systemically, and then you would hope that that crosses over. It's kind of like a lift and pray kind of deal.
Yeah.
That compound movements, big hips, knees, multi-joint movements that are just trying to build, you know, systemic strength. There's nothing wrong with them inherently, but the one thing that I'm looking at is it's a specific sport on its own, has its own skill level, especially when you get to Olympic style weightlifting. And also it has its own systemic stress. So although systemic strength is good, when you have a sport like Jiu-Jitsu that is absolutely ballistic, right? Especially when you start, because you're not controlling the tempo. You're not controlling your partners. One day I could have you, the next day I could have a 250-pound Brazilian man that is just like the heaviest, most aggressive person I've ever dealt with. So because that, I need to control, if I want consistent training, I need to control my stress that I'm facing. In your aspect, like to give you an example of somebody who's like been doing this for a while, just talk about kind of training load just in the Jiu-Jitsu example and what you feel like you can fit in the auxiliary example.
So if your focus is on Jiu-Jitsu development, you need to spend time on the mats. There's no two ways about that. You need mat time, you need experience, and you see a bunch of different scenarios over and over and over again. You need to be mindful about what you're looking for and what you're trying to develop. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. You can easily blow 3-4 hours on the mat and not think twice about it. And a lot of times you hear high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners that spend 8 hours a day on the mats, and they do, but what they don't tell you is that probably 7 of it is usually something technical. It's slow, it's talking, it's thinking, but all of that adds up. It accumulates fatigue. So when you think that you need to supplement that with some sort of physical activity or gym activity to support that, what I think about when I'm training, and just for my training load, especially being, a little bit deeper, a little bit older now, you sort of have to think about how much time you're spending to get to your jiu-jitsu goals, and then you can only backfill that a little bit. So with gym work and with strength and functional support. So for me, it's I having done it for a while, I can walk right up to that line where I know how much I can do. But for someone who's not aware of that, it's a little bit of trial and error. But you need to have this awareness, develop this awareness that you need to spend the time developing your technical proficiency, but that is all going to break down if your arm is breaking, if your shoulders are getting messed up, if you can't support the pushing and the pulling that you do every day. It's very much complementary. It's supplementary. It's not the focus.
Yeah. I think how I handled that in this is to first designate what kind of player you are.
Sure.
Because I see a big difference in somebody who's just learning jiu-jitsu who might have a fitness base.
And what I just said is very general. Like that was a hyper generalized statement.
Totally, yeah.
After a little bit of time, you're going to start realizing what kind of player you are.
Right.
You're going to start realizing where you gravitate towards, and that's part of the mindfulness, right? Like, what are your jiu-jitsu goals? None of this works if you're not really paying attention to what you're doing and where you're trying to go.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the interesting point about that is like so other people's style. So we can designate if somebody's new to jiu-jitsu, they're just getting their teeth kicked in every day.
Yeah.
As everything is overwhelming.
It's 100 miles an hour all the time. There is a massive load on your physicality.
Yeah.
Because there's no technique. Yeah. Everything's
a struggle.
Everything's a struggle. It is.
Yeah.
Strength reinforces your jiu-jitsu, and you're able to explore new avenues. Yeah. Which start taking you down, new paths.
Yeah, I think it's been really helpful to understand that some things that people think are like a huge benefit. Like ultimately, people think being flexible is good for jiu-jitsu. But what we find is actually having a range of motion that you can control is the ultimate benefit in jiu-jitsu. And so we're not just trying to get passively flexible. Like a lot of guys, they'll turn towards yoga or they'll do something like body flow or something like that because they equate flexibility with not being injured, but actually having control of the range of motion is the thing. That crossover, like what you're mentioning, gives you a tool to exploit somebody and also protect yourself.
Yes.
And that's what I think is like the big eye opener for me in training is to go, oh, okay, if I know how to orient my joint so that I can protect it from attacks, I can also look at somebody else's joint and then see how it's vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a better idea. It's that situational awareness, right? And again, it's part of that feedback loop that I just mentioned. It's more data that you can use not just for your own development, but interact with others on the mat, how you understand the game, how you develop the game, and it really becomes a tool for your own progression.
Awesome. Anyway, I wanted to quickly introduce this idea. Hopefully people have a good experience with this program. If you have any questions about it, obviously email us in or you can leave comments on the actual program itself. We are going to continue to develop past the 6 weeks, but the 6 weeks is kind of the introduction to it, and then we'll go through the aerobic portions after it. Thanks for taking the time, man.
Sure.
Hopefully this works out for people.